Shanda Sharer was a bubbly 12-year-old attending Hazelwood Middle School in New Albany, Indiana, in 1991. She was, by all accounts, a normal girl who easily made friends and enjoyed herself at school dances. Shanda Sharer met classmate Amanda Heavrin at Hazelwood in 1991, shortly after moving to the area from Kentucky with her recently divorced mother. Sharer and Heavrin became fast friends before falling in love. They went to a school dance together in October of that year. Melinda Lovelace, 16, who had previously been dating Heavrin for more than a year and was now extremely jealous of this new pairing, confronted Sharer and Heavrin there. Lovelace then publicly threatened Sharer and even discussed killing the 12-year-old. Sharer's mother transferred her to Our Lady of Perpetual Help Catholic School to protect her at this point. Unfortunately, this did not prevent the horrifying events that were about to occur. Lovelace enlisted the help of 3 friends, Lori Tackett, 17, Hope Rippey, 15, and Tony Lawrence, 15, on the cold winter night of January 10, 1992, to exact her revenge on Shanda Sharer. The foursome drove to Sharer's father's house, where she was spending the weekend. The girls pretended to be taking Sharer to see Heavrin as an excuse for their visit. Sharer instructed the girls to return after her parents had gone to bed, which they did. The girls then drove Sharer to the Witch's Castle, an isolated and abandoned house that served as a local teen hangout, and told her they were going to drive her there. Melinda Lovelace was hiding under a blanket in the back seat with a knife. The ringleader and jealous lover quickly emerged from beneath the blanket and threatened to slit Sharer's throat unless she confessed to stealing Heavrin from her. Sharer, in tears and fear for her life, attempted to respond but was unsuccessful. Lovelace then persuaded the other girls to take Sharer to a remote location with no one else for miles. The 3 other girls assumed Lovelace was just trying to scare Sharer into ending her relationship with Heavrin. They were completely wrong. Shanda Sharer was brutally tortured for 7 hours before she was killed by the 4 girls. They began by transporting Sharer to a remote trash dump near a logging road in a densely forested area. Lovelace and Tackett stripped Sharer of her clothes and punched her repeatedly. Lovelace slammed her knee into the victim's face, causing her to bleed profusely from her mouth. Tony and Hope, on the other hand, remained in Tackett's car. That torture was insufficient to satisfy the older girls. They then attempted to slit Sharer's throat with a dull knife. Instead, they stabbed her in the chest and strangled her with a rope before throwing her in the car trunk, believing she was dead. They then went to Tackett's house to clean up and drink sodas before realizing their victim was still alive, screaming in the trunk. Lori stabbed Sharer several more times before fleeing with Lovelace to beat and sodomize Sharer with a tire iron. When they got back to Lori's house, she laughed as she described what had happened to Rippey. Finally, the torturers stopped at a gas station in the early morning hours and purchased a 2-liter bottle of Pepsi, which they quickly emptied and refilled with gasoline. Driving to a remote location, the girls dragged their still-alive victim out of the trunk, wrapped her in a blanket, and poured gasoline on her. Then they set fire to Shanda Sharer and drove away. Lovelace had them return a few minutes later to pour more gasoline on her, watch her writhe in agony, and finally confirm that she was dead, just to make sure their work was done. The 4 girls laughed as they compared their sausage breakfast to Shanda Sharer's burnt corpse as they ate breakfast at McDonald's shortly after the killing. 2 hunters discovered the body later that morning. The girls began talking on the same day. Lovelace told Heavrin and another friend the entire story but made them promise to keep quiet. However, Tony and Hope went straight to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office with their parents that night and told them the entire story. By the next day, all 4 girls had been apprehended. To avoid the death penalty, all 4 girls were tried as adults and accepted plea bargains. Tony and Hope received lighter sentences because they were younger, less involved in the torture, and more forthcoming with authorities, with Tony receiving 20 years and Hope receiving 50 years, shortened to 35 on appeal. The former was released in 2000 after serving 9 years, while the latter served 14 years and was released in 2006. Meanwhile, Lori and Loveless were both sentenced to 60 years in prison. Loveless, the ringleader behind the murder and the one who was angry with Sharer, naturally received a longer sentence than the two younger girls, but why would Lori contribute so much to the killing and earn herself a longer sentence as well? "I didn't know Shanda at all," Lori said in one interview. "I didn't go into that evening expecting or hoping for anything to happen. No, I didn't. Pure influence. That was all there was to it. It got out of hand far too quickly. It was something that should never have happened." Furthermore, the convicted murderer explained why she believes people kill in an interview with Dr. Phil. "In my opinion, they want to feel superior, or high on the victim's fear, and they want to spill blood." Her prediction was partially correct. While Lori was involved in the murder of Shanda Sharer, she was released from prison in January 2018. What would motivate a 16-year-old Loveless to plan such a heinous murder? Loveless did, however, have a difficult childhood. Her father, a Vietnam veteran, sexually abused her and her siblings when they were younger, and experts believe her rage stems from that abuse, for which he was later arrested and convicted. But it appears that Loveless has found some relief from the cycle of violence and abuse in prison. Loveless has received assistance from the Indiana Canine Assistant Network, or ICAN. She trains puppies to be assistance dogs for the disabled behind bars. One of the dog breeders who supplies Indiana with puppies, like Shanda Sharer, is a burn victim. What are your thoughts on the Shanda Sharer's case? I really appreciate your input. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Be a part of the Chris Crime Diaries family and hit the subscribe button now.